We are coming into the protocol city of the world. Washington, D.C., as our nation's capital, plays host to the world's ambassadors and heads of state. Here, where lawmakers gather and kings are entertained, there is another form of law that is unwritten. A powerful code at work, not only in Washington, but across America and all the great capitals of the world. This powerful unwritten law is the Code of Etiquette. Now, more than ever, its importance is felt throughout the business and social world. Today, success of the highest order requires the personal confidence that comes from a working knowledge of good manners. We invite you to venture into the world of etiquette training at the highest level. Marjabelle Young Stewart, the woman Newsweek magazine has called the Empress of Etiquette, has taught etiquette to all of America, on TV talk shows and through her more than 14 books. She brings to you now the course she teaches to top-level executives. Mrs. Stewart is arriving at Washington's Four Seasons Hotel. Her courses are taught in more than 800 cities, including London, Paris, and Tokyo. Among her former students are members of several of America's first families. In this personal seminar, Mrs. Stewart offers you your own private finishing school.
The table is ready, and the candles are lit, as they always would be before the guests entered the dining room. Oh, and our guests are going to be here any minute. But let's talk now for just a moment about the invitation the guests have received to this black tie dinner.
Marjabelle Young Stewart requests the pleasure of Miss Susan Harrison's company at an award dinner. This is the correct form for a formal invitation. Third person is used rather than simply, "I invite you." The invitation will be mailed about 3 weeks before the event. It should be handwritten or engraved. You will probably be invited for 8 or 8:30. Do arrive on time. Guests are expected to arrive no later than 8 minutes past the appointed time. Proper attire will be indicated on the invitation, either black tie or white tie. Women will wear an evening dress. Ms. is more appropriate for women on a business occasion. Susan Harrison accepts with pleasure Marjabelle Young Stewart's kind invitation. Your reply should be written on cream-colored paper, and it should be worded in the same manner as the invitation. A card engraved with your name can be used for thank you notes or replies. When your name is engraved, you need not repeat it on the note. For a social dinner, the invitation might read, Mr. and Mrs. William E. Stewart request the pleasure of Mr. and Mrs. John F. Sanderford's company at dinner. Your reply, if you use plain stationery, would read, Mr. and Mrs. John F. Sanderford accept with pleasure. Most importantly, the reply should be sent promptly. The matter of where people are seated is a sensitive one. You may find a seating chart with guest's title and last name. At a business dinner, seating is by rank. Only in social situations are men and women seated alternately.
When the men arrive at the dinner, they will find a dinner envelope. It will be lying on a tray on a table. This may take the form of a small folded card with a man's name on the outside and the name of his dinner partner inside.
It is the duty of the host to see that each guest meets his dinner partner before going into dinner. Again, on business occasions, Ms. is the title for a woman. Here you see the correct form used by the White House for an invitation place card and menu. Now let's turn to the awards dinner as our guests are arriving. Please pay close attention to how the guests enter the room and are seated. Each lady moves to the right of her chair so that the man to her left can pull out her chair for her. Using 2 hands, he must pull it out far enough to give her room to be seated. The hostess is the last to enter the formal dining room as the meal begins. A man always seats the woman on his right, So notice that the hostess will be seated by the man on her left, not by the man who escorted her in. Women are seated as soon as they enter the room. Men wait until all women have been seated. At the end of the meal, they do not rise until their hostess does. The correct posture at the table is erect but relaxed. No need to be stiff and uncomfortable. When your chair is pushed in, you should be at a distance of 1 hand's length from the edge of the table. Guests will wait for the hostess to make the first move. When she lifts her napkin, they know that the dinner is beginning. The napkins are unfolded halfway because they are large. Here's the menu our diners will be enjoying tonight. The service begins with the female guest of honor. The clam course is served from the left and placed on the service plate. The appropriate wine immediately follows. If you do not care for additional wine, simply say, "No thank you," or you may allow a glass to be poured to sit in front of you.
Throughout the course of this meal, let's watch closely and learn the proper use of every utensil. When you sit down at the table, it's too late. And you know, when you view the tape the next time, why don't you bring your knife and fork along with you and practice with us? The more you practice, the more it's going to become second nature.
Here's the place setting we'll be using tonight. Notice an additional fork located to the right of your plate, found resting in the bowl of your soup spoon. The seafood fork is the smallest fork, and it's the only one you'll see to the right. Since the bread and butter plates are popular, especially in restaurants, we've included one for our awards dinner. With the clam course tonight, you'll be using the seafood fork. Hold it at the top with the thumb and index finger and let the fork rest on your middle finger. Then, pierce the lemon with the tines of the fork. Cup your hand and squeeze the lemon over the clams. Now, secure the shell and lift the caviar-topped clam to your mouth. As you take a bite, lean forward to meet the fork. As you lower it, lean back. When you're finished, leave the fork on the small plate. Soup may be pre-served in the rimmed soup plate and placed on the service plate, or it can be ladled from a tureen. The soup spoon sits to the right of the knife, oval-shaped, larger than a teaspoon. Pick up the soup spoon and hold it as you would a pencil. Dip the soup by moving the spoon away from you.
One thing you want to remember about eating delicate soup is don't slurp. All you need to do is bring the soup to your lips, tilt the bowl, and inhale like an angel.
When you're finished, leave the soup spoon on the soup plate. The only time you leave the spoon on the saucer is when it's served in a cream soup bowl or a cup. You won't find either of these at a formal dinner. The serving plate and the soup bowl are removed together, and always from the right. A warm plate is then placed before each guest. Remember, an empty plate is never exchanged for a full one. Our fillet of wild Scottish salmon is served from a platter held flat on the palm of the waiter's left hand, using a napkin placed between his hand and the dish. Take the serving fork in your left hand and the serving spoon in your right. Then move a portion of the fish to your own plate. Keep the spoon underneath. If you like, spoon a little more sauce from the platter onto your plate. Then return the serving utensils to the platter, fork on bottom, spoon turned over on top of the fork. The two should be slightly cross. While our guests are being served, let's review the proper way to hold your fork and knife. Let the knife and fork rest across your hands diagonally as you see here. Now, close your hands and rotate your wrists, turning your palms down. You're holding each utensil so that it is controlled by your thumb and index finger. Don't use a pitchfork hold or a cello hold. If you do, you'll make a bad impression on your fellow diners. And you'll find these incorrect methods don't work as well. There are two acceptable styles of using a knife and fork: continental and American. First, the continental, and later we'll review the American style. The continental way is to secure the meat or fish in your left hand and cut with your right. Then, with your left hand, lift the first bite to your mouth with the fork held tines down. The resting position for this style is placement of knife and fork in a V with the fork tines down. When you're finished, move them together, closing the door. With the fish course, the fork and knife are designed for comfortable handling of fish, even if the fish has bones. Remember, the fork will be held in the left hand. In the continental style, you never cut more than one piece of food at a time. When needed, your knife may be used as a pusher. If you decide you want to learn this style, make certain you have lots of practice at home and have mastered it before you use it in public. When you're finished, place the knife in the closed position. Lips should be blotted before drinking to avoid traces of food being left on the crystal. This course is a refreshing palate cleanser, presented just before the meat course. It's not a dessert. The dish is served with a small spoon, and you'll use it to take a little of the sorbet at a time. The spoon is held close to the end. Notice, if you will, how the elbows are held close to the body. If you don't do this, you'll be bumping your neighbor. So hold your elbows as if a book were tucked up high under each arm, and you mustn't drop the books. You'll also have better leverage that way. In this restaurant, dome service is used for the meat course. This would not be done in a formal dinner at home. Instead, a warm plate would be placed in front of each guest, and the meat would be served from a platter. For this course, you'll be using the dinner knife and fork, the largest of the eating tools. They are held in the continental method demonstrated before, or the American style, sometimes called the zigzag style because the fork changes hands. To use the American style, you'll hold the knife in your right hand and the fork in your left. Stroke the meat. It's acceptable to cut as many as 3 bites at a time. Now, put the knife down and take the fork in your right hand, bringing it tines upward to your mouth. To rest, place your knife across the top of the plate, blade toward the center, and leave the fork tines up at a distance from the knife. Place fork and knife in the closed or finished position when you are done, side by side, at 4 o'clock on the right.
Either American or continental style are entirely acceptable. Let's watch what's happening at our table and watch as each utensil is used and with each food. I think you'll get very comfortable in time.
Here, the American style is being used, cutting no more than 3 pieces at a time. Transferring the fork to the right hand, bring the food tines up to the mouth. And enjoy the conversation. You're invited for your company and conversation, not your appetite. In the American style, put the knife down, blade towards the center, after cutting while the fork is in the right hand. To rest, place the fork as you see here. Our host is using the continental method. Whether you use continental or American, cutting is the same. Stroke the meat, never saw. Our hostess is using the continental method, fork in left hand, knife in right, placing the utensils in the rest position to blot her lips. When you're finished, bring the utensils together. The continental finished fork tines down. The American finished fork tines up.
Now, the next course is a salad and cheese course, and it's traditionally served after the meat course. It's the only course that is not served with additional wine.
The salad and cheese is served as a separate course. The salad fork is the one which is closest to your plate. It has an indentation in one tine to help you secure the slippery lettuce. This fork is smaller than the dinner fork and is used to cut the greens. You may also use your cheese knife. Never leave your fork or knife sitting like oars on your plate in either American or continental styles. When you've finished your salad, leave the fork and the knife, even if you didn't use it, on the salad plate in the closed or finished position. Let's take a quick lesson in buttering bread. Hold the roll over the bread and butter plate, using your thumb to break the bread in half. If butter is passed, place it on your bread and butter dish first. Then, break off a bite-sized piece and use your own butter knife to butter the pieces as you eat them. Leave the butter knife on the plate. As you eat the bread, lean over your service or dinner plate so that any crumbs will fall there. The blade of the knife should be towards the center. But in case someone missed the plate, the table will be brushed clear before dessert. The waiter will hold a tray below the edge of the table and use a napkin or brush to sweep any crumbs into the tray. The table is cleared except for wine and water glasses. This is the only time you'll be without a plate in front of you. We're now ready for dessert. Your plated dessert is carried in with a fork balanced at the left and a spoon at the right. Immediately after dessert is served, champagne is poured. Dessert may be eaten with a spoon or fork or both. You're free to use whatever utensil is brought to you. We've come to the time when the toasts are made. The toast is a reminder of the spirit of generosity that lies behind all etiquette. The host proposes a toast to the guest of honor. This is done by standing, raising your glass to eye level, and speaking briefly on the marvels of the one being toasted. If you are that one, don't drink. Just sit still and blush. Then, you may raise your glass and say thank you, or you may want to propose a toast in reply. After the guest of honor has been toasted, the guests are free to begin toasting. When you've finished your dessert, leave the utensils on the dessert plate in the closed or finished position. Your fruit plate is brought in, and on top of it, your finger bowl. If the fruit course requires a fruit fork and knife, simply place the utensils at the sides of your plate. Lift the finger bowl with your index finger, thumb, and third finger of your right hand, and pick up the doily with your left hand. Place it above the dessert plate. Secure the cluster of grapes, if needed, with your left hand, and pluck one grape at a time. If you're ever in doubt at the table about what to do, take a sip as you watch your hostess or someone else who seems to know what to do. And while you're at it, do hold the glass correctly as he's doing. When the meal is over, use your finger bowl to dip your fingers lightly, one hand at a time. Use your napkin to dry your hands on your lap. Except when you're blotting your lips, the napkin should be kept below the level of the table.
Now you're fully acquainted with the tools of the table. Learning to handle all these utensils and courses correctly will prepare you for every other dining occasion. All other place settings are derived from the formal table.
Before we proceed, here are a few more tips on dining. To signal the end of the dinner, the hostess will place her napkin to the left of the plate. If you need to leave the table for any reason during the meal, quietly say, "Excuse me," and place your napkin on your chair. not on the table. At a formal dinner at home, the salt and pepper shaker is removed when the table is cleared prior to the dessert course. Candlesticks should be white or ivory with tall, thin candles so that the flame doesn't flicker in the eyes. If you refrigerate candles prior to use, it will cut down on dripping. At a company dinner, have a member of the staff play host at each table to make sure that all runs smoothly. The damask tablecloth should have a middle crease down the center of the table. The fold in the crease should be tent-wise to the surface of the table. A distance of about 2 feet from plate center to plate center is the most comfortable spacing for serving and for conversation. If you don't have a good eye for distances, use a ruler or a piece of string to measure. Never wear a strapless dress to a dinner party. You'll look naked above the centerpiece. Always write a thank you note the next day. For business purposes, a thank you note can be typed on letterhead stationery or handwritten on a correspondence card. You must remain until the guests of honor or other high-ranking guests leave. That will usually be 30 minutes to an hour after the meal is finished. Never let a toast run longer than 3 minutes. If you're a junior executive, ask the host privately if your offering a toast would be acceptable. And one last piece of advice before we close. Avoid the common pitfalls. Here are 5 costly faux pas which we've asked our guests to enact for you. Watch closely and then steer clear of any of these errors. Watch your posture at the table. Never slouch, and don't let your fingers warm the bowl of your white wine. Remember, don't saw your meat. Always close your lips before removing the fork. Never hold the fork tines up in your left hand. Always keep your elbows close to your body. No puppy sounds. Keep your lips together when chewing. There is a grown-up way to eat watermelon. Use a knife and fork. If you get seeds in your mouth, and you will, drop them into your tightly cupped hand, then put them on your plate. You can eat large strawberries with your fingers. Hold it by the stem and dip it into the powdered sugar. Then leave the stem on your plate. Berries served like this, in a bowl, should be eaten with a spoon. That's also true for any berries or sliced fruit served in cream. Here's another dish that requires a fork at the table. Squeeze the lemon if you choose. Then, dip the shrimp with your fork into the cocktail sauce. Don't try to eat the whole thing in one bite. It's okay to dip the second bite with a fork. One of the biggest challenges of the breakfast table is the soft-boiled egg. It will arrive in an egg cup. Take your knife and tap the small end in a horizontal motion. Hold the cup steady against your plate with the other hand. Then, lift off the top, season the egg, and eat it with a spoon. Unless your host is eating with his fingers or you're at a picnic, use your knife and fork for the fried chicken. Anytime it's served on a plate, use utensils. It's easiest if you cut with the grain of the meat. Escargot is easier to eat than it looks. With your left hand, hold the shell in the metal tongs. Hold the seafood fork in your right hand to pull out the snail and dip it into the garlic butter sauce. You may break off a piece of bread, drop it in the sauce, and spear it with your fork. Fork and tongs are left in the dish. How about a plate of spaghetti? The proper approach is to twirl it around your fork. Make it into a little cocoon, bite off any loose strands and eat them first. Then, put the rest in your mouth. As with any sauce, you may spear a small piece of bread with your fork. The fish knife and fork are designed for easy handling of the fish. Slit the length of the back. Then turn back the top flap of meat and dislodge the bone. The skeleton should come out in one piece. If you need to, remove any bones with your thumb and forefinger. The fish is now ready to eat. Remove any bones from your mouth with your thumb and forefinger. Place it on the rim of your plate. Remember, place your utensils in the closed position when you're finished. Here's a tricky food you won't find at a formal dinner. Lobster. You may ask for a bib. Begin by twisting off the larger claws. Try to remove the entire claw, then take hold of the lobster and break off the tail. To push the meat out, push a pick or a seafood fork into the flipper end. Then pull off the shell, exposing the tamale, and in females, the roe. You'll want to use the pliers to crack the claw. You can get the meat out with a fork. To protect your tie or clothing from splashes, you may hold your napkin against your chest with one hand. For the small claws, pull out the meat as if you were sucking on a straw. You won't see corn on the cob at a formal dinner either. It's too messy. But you can minimize that. Butter only a small portion of it at once. If you butter the whole thing, you'll have it all over your face. Move down the rows like a typewriter. Use the side of your spoon as a knife and cut the cheese against the side of the bowl. Always move the spoon away from you. Crackers are an accompaniment and eaten as you see here. They are not broken into your soup. Sandwiches are usually easy, but when the triangles of a club sandwich tower before you, you may be less certain. Simply pick it up, as usual, parallel to the table, and use your fork to eat whatever falls out. And the taste of success, caviar. Take a modest portion onto the toast. And then add lemon juice and any garnishes you like. Let's have a cup of tea. First, pour the milk if you like it. Place the tea strainer over the cup. Pour the tea through and then put the strainer back on the pot. Add sugar if you like. And stir. Now, we're ready for the scones. First, slice the bread open. Then, put the Devonshire cream on one half. And preserves on the other. Don't bring the pieces together. This isn't a sandwich. Eat the two halves separately with your fingers. Truly the ultimate finger food. Pull off a leaf, dip it into the sauce, and then scrape it through your teeth. Put the discarded leaves on the plates or dish that's provided. When you get to the center of the artichoke, it's time for utensils. Use your knife and fork to remove the fuzz and eat the heart. When finished, always place your utensils in the finished position. We'll return to our formal table one last time for the final toast. Mrs. Stewart, will you do us the honor?
To all of you, love, laughter, and happy ever after. And to all of you, all the success in the world.